Alrighty, everyone. Here we are in my kitchen, or I guess mi cocina, since this is Spanish class. But I guess when we're talking about foreign cultures and trying to, I guess, wrap our heads around them, I thought the easiest way to really kind of draw a parallel between a foreign culture and our own is to literally draw a parallel. So we're talking about something that affects me personally, being that I was raised in a very Catholic family. When you're in a Catholic family, you gotta do stuff like Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, Lent, Easter, all them good holidays. But Lent's always kind of been I don't know, it's always been really fascinating to me in that it's such a bizarre holiday. We're like, alright, we can't eat meat unless it's a fish fry-in on a Friday or a fish fry any other day of the week. That's apparently very okay if you're, an Easter and Christmas Catholic, as I like to call it. So anyway, my grandmother was a big fan of getting fish fries. There was one particular place, every Lent would have them, and they had the best fish fry in all of the Finger Lakes. So that was something that I was like to, I don't know, it was easy for me to draw a parallel to, being that countries such as Mexico, for example, which is what we're going to be talking about, is also a very Catholic country and has their own sets of traditions that follow this particular holiday. That being is generally you eat less. You're not supposed to eat meat at all, and if you do, it's generally fish. And Mexico being a country that eats a lot of fish, there's all sorts of options as to what to, be their stand-in for our traditional fish fry. So what we're going to do is make a very basic tilapia with some seasonings, some vegetables. I got all sorts of peppers and onions and some garlic, because every good recipe has garlic in it. And we're just going to serve that up with some rice. Be a very basic kind of what the every family would eat, what people wouldn't cost a lot of money, and trying to hit as broad of an audience as possible, and I think this is our best bet. Alright, so honestly the first step, or at least the first logical step, is to start with your veg, because it's always the most tedious part of any preparation for any recipe, is to prepare the vegetables. And that's honestly a good thing. This is pretty vegetable heavy, because we just so happen to have tons of produce in the house today. So I'm going to finely chop this white onion. It actually might even be a Spanish onion, I'm not sure, because I tore the label off the package like a fool. We're going to try to thinly dice it, which generally kind of means, dicing is pretty cut and dry. But when they say do it fine, I always give it an extra, cautionary step. Point is, we don't want giant chunks of onion overpowering our fish flavor, because this wild-caught South American tilapia, actually it might be farm raised, I don't know, I should probably look that up, it's a very bland, well not bland, it's a very light fish flavor. So it's very easy to overpower if that's something you're into. However, I like fish flavors. I'm not so big on the smell though. I'm going to cut there. Just stop. Dude, there's some mushy parts in the middle of this onion, which is nice and gross. Oh. So if you're gonna get onions, never buy a ton. Like you should only get as many onions as you're really gonna need, because they have a very finite shelf life, and when they get old, they turn into battery acid that can aerosolize. But what we're doing is, I guess, try to keep everything fine. We're going to be sauteing these all together, and I was really just trying to go for, a lot of the recipe called for canned and or imported ingredients, which seemed fine at the time, but upon reflection started to seem, out of character for this sort of project. I figure if I was living in Mexico and was preparing a nice dish during Lent time for myself or my family, I wouldn't go to a supermarket, would I? I'd probably have to go to some sort of open-air market, get produce the old-fashioned way. I have to haggle for it, for 2 avocados and some peppers or whatever. So what I did is, all this produce that we're using, except for the onion, was grown right here in our back garden. So it's definitely not from a market, but it is, however, fresh and nice. And it really doesn't matter, I suppose, how finely you chop it. It's kind of a preference thing. Pretty much with every recipe, that's generally not super important. In this case, I'm chopping it fine because, well, what else am I doing? I got the time, the energy, and a really sharp knife. That's probably good. The first official step involving a stove and or any more advanced techniques other than use the knife on the veggies is to melt about 3 tablespoons of butter in a big pan. I always take this as more of a suggestion because who really has the time to measure their butter? And, well, it's one of those things you need to use as much as really you need. So we're going to melt the butter and then add the vegetables so that way they can get to know each other nice and good. This can take any amount of time depending on how hot you're doing it and if you're impatient. I, however, am not impatient, so I'm going to let this take a second. And rolling. And then once the butter's melted, you just add your veggies. We're going to add a lot of veggies because veggies are good for you and we had them. It's very important you drop at least a little bit on the ground. You know, pay your respects. And then we're sauteing. Really, at this point, it's all up to you how much you want to do this. I like mine stuff nice and sauteed, which may take a while. Some people say you need to caramelize onions for a good hour before they're perfect. And those people are a little bit crazy, but you know, sometimes they know what they're talking about. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, it calls for 1 whole garlic clove minced. But if you're like me, you don't have time to mince your own garlic, so you just get some pre-minced. And it'll tell you right on the bottle or jar how much is an equivalent. And we're already kind of eyeballing it here because, you know, I'm just going to go on a limb and assume that most people in rural Mexico do not measure either. They just wing it. Cooking is a thing passed down over the generations. It's very culturally relevant. So, you know, we're just going to do what my grandmother would do and do some general approximations. We're not doing anything fancy here. We're just making a nice, lovely Friday night dinner for our family during the holy month. Though it's not technically a month. It's actually 40 days, according to my handy notes here. Lent this year was between March 6th and April 9th, which is approximately 40 days, give or take the 6 Sundays, which for some reason don't count. And the Spanish word, I'm not sure if it's used all across the Spanish-speaking world as they're a very diverse group of countries, but the general Spanish term for Lent is Cuaresima, which comes from the word cuarenta, meaning 40, because there's 40 days when you don't count the Sundays, and, well, I'm not really sure why that, but far be it for me to understand. And it's supposed to be a general period of holiness, abstinence, sobriety. You're not supposed to eat meat except for Fridays, where you're allowed to eat fish, but specifically fish. People do celebrate it in their own ways, as we all do, but for the most part, it is frowned upon. And being that it's a Catholic tradition and Catholicism is all about rules, well, we're following most of those right now. We're on the next step, which is saucing up our mixture. The idea is kind of, create, was sort of a Chipotle-y tomato-based sauce, but I didn't have the Chipotle peppers, and we're going for a very authentic, we're using what's in the cupboards, because that's what, well, the authentic peoples do they not? So we're using just some traditional kind of red sauce, bringing, I guess, my own flair to the recipe. And I thought it would mesh well. It's very bland, kind of basically just onion and garlic sauce, just a little bit to give it some color and to give us something to cook down. Like, we want to boil it down just a little bit, and then we're going to add the fish and let it cook in this saucy, spicy, delicious mixture. What I'm also going to do is throw a bunch of hot sauce in, because I have this lovely Chipotle Cholula hot sauce, which is the best hot sauce, by the way. If you ever try to dispute that, I'll fight you any day of the week. We're going to add this liberally because, well, we're making Spanish food, and what is Spanish food without the hot sauce? Anyway, we are just about ready to start cooking some fish. Let's do it. Alright, we got some lovely farm-raised, I believe Peruvian tilapia. I could have tried to get some Mexican one for that, but I wasn't really trying to be picky. You know, tilapia is really just tilapia. And it's a good fish. It's well-rounded. I enjoy it. And you should struggle with it very briefly. It's important. It's also very important you touch your face as many times as possible after creating the peppers, so you start sweating halfway through what you're doing. And always wash your hands after dealing with raw meat, so I don't think we need to see that either. So we also kind of want to season our meat before we put it in. I'm kind of trying to condense steps here, so I'm seasoning it kind of while it's already laid on top of our dish. But, you know, cutting corners where we can. And all we're going to do is give it a light salt and peppering. And honestly, that's how you should treat a lot of your meat sometime. If you're going to be cooking it in some sort of sauce anyway, but you want to give it a little extra kick, little salt and pepper goes a long way. But you should do all 3 of them first before you put it away, huh? Anywho, we're doing this just, I don't know, I think it's a good idea. You should honestly add salt and pepper to everything you cook. It's just like the quintessential base flavors, especially when it comes to cooking meat. And I don't think it's going to hurt anything. I suppose I could have gotten some taco seasoning or something, but that felt just a little bit extra. We're not trying to create, the piece flavors and stones. We're trying to create what would be just a nice, happy little family dinner on a budget. Something that everybody could or possibly would eat. I'm not trying to show you like what really rich people do on Lent. That seems kind of defeatist. Just what the average cute little family might have. And we're just going to get everything nice and kind of saucy and let it stew a little bit. I think we might need to add a little bit more sauce, but I might do that off camera. I think we're good for that. So now what you have to do, it's kind of like our very last step in cooking, is, well, let it cook. The top is these slices are very thin. It's kind of very thin, and it's a wispy fish. It doesn't need to cook long. If you do it on the grill, it takes minutes. So all we're going to do is kind of let it just stew. We've added some salsa to our sauce mixture because that felt more authentic, and we had it. So we're just going to let it bubble a little bit. Try to keep our heat medium to low. We don't want to overcook the fish, but it's kind of hard to overcook. You really got to really fry it up. So we're just going to let that kind of stew and congeal while the flavors will get to know each other and break down. The sauce is going to thicken a little bit, which is what we want. And then all we have to do is serve up some rice and dig in. Well, as you can see, things have changed. So we've added a lot of heat to our mixture. And as far as I can tell, everything has come out swimmingly. And I don't know how well you can see it, but the tilapia is just kind of broken apart into these tiny little chunks that I can cut with this rubber spatula here. And I believe it might be done. I usually like to cook my fish just a little bit extra because, well, you really don't want to play with that. But tilapia, is, like I said, is a fish that cooks very quickly. It's supposedly 8 minutes in the oven, according to my counter robot. And I believe that, because on the grill it's like a solid 5. So once it's done, it's really kind of up to you what you want to do next. If you let this sit here for a while, all this liquid's going to cook out, and you're going to have a nice kind of thick, I don't know, mush, a stew. We're kind of going for a sauce. Because like a lot of Spanish food, we're going to serve this with a good accompaniment of rice. And I do love me some Spanish rice. I'm going to cheat a little bit with the rice because it's something that I made the other day for dinner, and some leftover Spanish rice that came out of a package. I could whip up a new package if you really wanted to, but I think everyone here knows how to make minute rice. And Spanish rice is one of those things where I've tried to make it in the past, but it's very difficult to do well if it's not something that you're highly experienced in. So I think it would just be a lot easier for everyone involved if I make somebody else's rice and we eat that. Because I'm really excited to eat this. I'm really happy I added that. Kind of made up for not having the adobo peppers. Which adobo peppers are great, or chipotle peppers in adobo sauce. There's a difference. They're fantastic. However, I don't know, it seemed like using canned ingredients kind of defeated the whole point. Maybe I'm just being silly. If I do this again, I definitely would probably try the adobo peppers, just because, I don't know, there's something I've always enjoyed. Great for chili. Really any kind of chili you want to make. You think that looks like a food safe 140 degrees Fahrenheit? It's hard to get a look at the inside of the fish because it's all kind of congealed together. And the fish is broken up very, very nicely. I actually didn't really anticipate that, but I should have. Especially when you're cooking this sort of fish in this sort of sauce, that it's going to break down almost immediately. But I kind of like that, because then you get more of like a, well, I guess a true sauce or stew, rather than just giant chunks of fish with sauce on them. I think our flavors have gotten to know each other nice and well. Tons of garlic, tons of fresh vegetables, high quality fish. I think we're ready to plate. So as you see, we've taken our Spanish rice and applied it to the plate. This is Top's brand, in case you're wondering. It's not the best I've ever had, but it was on sale, and we have a lot of mouths to feed around here, so it came in handy. We actually made it to make quesadillas, but for completely unrelated, just quesadilla night, which we do often. It's fantastic. Good food, easy to make, and we're ready to get started here. So what we're going to do is take the rice and our nice lovely fish paste mixture and just kind of apply it to the top as if it were well, sauce on noodles. If you're Italian like me, most Sundays you'd come home from church and eat a big plate of spaghetti with all sorts of meatballs and sausage and pork chops cooked into it. And I think this is kind of invoking that very similar thing. It's a very simple dish, tomato based all the way, with all sorts of just onion and pepper. I don't think I mentioned earlier, but we ended up using 2 jalapenos, whole jalapenos, no seeds though, because we're not crazy, and half a bell pepper to 1 Spanish onion, because we're really not trying to go for gold. However, I think we've done it. So like a very important part of any recipe, I guess, is to A, share it with a friend, which is how I'm paying my cameraman, and B, pair it with a nice bev, which is also how I'm paying my cameraman. So, shoot, I don't even remember the name of this little guy, but I believe it came with hibiscus in it, and I believe hibiscus grows in South America, so it almost kind of ties back in. And we get kind of that nice red contrast, which makes everything look so nice and beautiful. Oh, that is good. So I suppose we should figure out how it tastes. Why do we have no forks? Alright, the spoon will work. I'm not fancy. Just a regular old person. Let's get a nice good hunk of fish. Some sauce and some rice. That right there is the bomb.com. Holy crap. It is very much kind of like a very thin stew. But wow. I've had Mexican fish like soup before. I actually made it one time. And it reminds me a lot of that, where you get kind of like that fishy taste that permeates through the whole dish, but not so much that it's overpowering. And it really kind of goes well with like the tomato flavors and the peppers and the onions and the garlic. And then it just brings rice to the party to kind of soak all that up. And I've never been at one party and thought, oh, rice, get out of here. I don't want to be here. It's fantastic. If anything I would do differently, probably would A, try it with the peppers the recipe called for, if I had them. And B, I'd probably use brown rice next time, just because that's a little bit better for you. And let's face it, brown rice is just as good as white rice, and don't let anyone tell you any different. But I'm really happy with that.